Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello everybody, welcome to our Success Thursday, the big question of the week, this week with Jaques Smit. Hey Jaques, welcome back.
How's it going, Vasco?
So Jaques, who now lives in New Zealand but has a very, very diverse background and is interested in how to help others learn. And all of this together brings a very interesting question. We'll talk about success in a minute, but I think given your background, Jaques, I'm really excited to hear what is your favorite retrospective format and why?
Awesome. Well, this is also a really difficult one to answer because I can say some that I think would be useful for others to be able to follow and use themselves. And then there's ones that you probably need some advanced team coaching skills to be able to execute. But I'll start with what I like to do. So I actually really enjoy having a team coaching conversation with the team, where what I'll start with is essentially the silent writing. So let's all write down, what are our opportunities for improvement that are on the table at the moment. And then we'll do a quick dot vote just to pick what's the most important thing for us to focus on right now. But what I won't do is have open conversation. I'll lead the conversation from a coaching perspective. So I'll open up the floor and say, okay, least powerful person in the room. Share with us when you see this idea, what comes to mind for you? Just tell us about your perspective on that. And let them kind of unpack that from what they could see. And then once they've gone, I'll go down the row, basically, have each person answer the same question until we get to the leader, the product owner, or the most powerful person in the room, whoever that is. And then I'll ask, okay, cool. So now we've heard what everybody thought. So I'll bullet back each time I hear, reflect what I hear, distill it down to just the core essence of what each person has said. And then I'll work it back the other way and say, okay, what's possible for us here? And then we go back around the other way, so in reverse. And then when we've got back to the original person, and I keep succinctly calling it out, so we've got a building understanding growing between us. Then I'll say, okay, now that we know what the challenges that we want to face, we know what's possible for us, what are some of the specific actions that we can take that will help us to change this? Let's put a proposal on the table for how we can make this better. And what I'll do from there is split people into little groups of 3 to come up with their best proposal, the best way that they can possibly make something cool of this. And if I have enough time, I'll throw a little bit of complex facilitation in there, and I'll send one person from each group to the clockwise group to pitch the proposal. And I draw on Dave Snowden here, and I basically get the pitcher isn't allowed to interact with the crowd. So they have to speak what their proposal is, and the other group just listen. They're not allowed to interrupt. They're not allowed to ask questions, just listen. And then when they're done speaking, the pitcher has to stand and listen whilst the group of people digest it and talk about what they've heard, and then just kind of make sense of it. They don't answer questions. They don't ask questions. They just listen. And then we rotate back, and each of the little groups go and they digest what's just been discussed, and they try to internalize, okay, what do we need to change about our proposal based on what we heard? They didn't understand this. They didn't hear this. We need to kind of build this into our pitch. And then we rotate in the other direction. So depending on how big the group is, obviously, if you're working with 9, then you're doing 2 rotations. If you're only working with 6 people, then you're only going to do this once. And then when we're done with it, we bring it back to the middle, and we basically each group pitch their idea to the bigger group. And what's usually happened at this point is they started to coalesce because the groups are integrating what they've heard from each other into the ideas, so that when we come to the main group, there's kind of one big idea that we can address, and then discuss and decide what is it that we're going to do about this? What's the specific action? Are there any objections on the basis of this isn't safe to try, this isn't in alignment with our vision, or it will slow us down in the long run? If there are no objections, we go forward. If there are objections, let's fix it before we move on. but there's no, I don't want to do it because I don't like it. It's like we're moving forward with this. We've discussed it. We're all in agreement that something needs to be done about it. We need to try something. And we need to just make sure that we have a clear fail state that we can test against, like a hypothesis that we can test against. So that's my approach. I wouldn't advise this for introductory level facilitators. It can be quite challenging to manage.
But I really like how you're using the group's, let's call it commitment to their own ideas to help cross-pollinate ideas from different groups. And what happens, it's also my observation, is that you start cross-pollinating, right? Like people start, as you said, integrating ideas from other groups to make their own proposal even better and more applicable and more impactful. And I think that this really starts to create what we would like to have in teams, which is kind of this shared consciousness. So we understand the problem and solution in the same way, but also augmented creativity, because now we're not limited to what we can think of. We can use ideas from all of the different groups. And this is really a superpower in the context of software development, because a lot of the challenges that we have in software development are only limited by our creativity, right? Whether it is about process or technology. A lot of the problems we are facing is just because we live in a specific context, typically project management context, that does not allow us to see how things could be different. And I have, of course, a very first-hand experience of that, having advocated no estimate since 2012 and constantly facing the challenges from other people that clearly come from that project management perspective of the world, right? And this, you called it complex facilitation. I would call it cross-pollination. Others would call it something like model storming. Like, it doesn't really matter what we call it, but this idea of sharing ideas and building ideas together as a team, I think, can be extremely powerful. So thank you for sharing that, Jaques. Now, we do this retrospectives because we want to be successful and we want to help our teams succeed as well. So let's dive into that, Jaques. What do you call success for Scrum Masters?
Well, this goes back to something we've discussed in a previous day's episode, where the fundamentals for Scrum to work, to have a chance of working, is there must be trust in the team. They need to be able to resolve conflicts constructively, and there needs to be conflicts. Like, I think often people get this misunderstanding that Scrum isn't supposed to be conflicting. It's supposed to be everyone gets along and it's a fantastic daisies everywhere. It's like, no, it is conflict. It's supposed to be conflict. We're supposed to disagree, but we must disagree in a way that we don't attack the people and that our ideas can come together, not bounce off each other. So constructing together, not destructing together. And then the last one is decision-making paradigms, like that they actually know when should who make what kind of decision, and who should be involved, and how many people should be consulted or not consulted, and how do we make it optimal, and how do we go about making that decision as well. So for me, a Scrum Master's success rate is in what level of team they've got. Do you have a team that's fundamentally not able to form at all because they don't trust each other and they're having a really hard time, even being in the same room with each other? In which case, you've got a lot of work to do, and I suggest you go and learn some conflict resolution skills. Nonviolent communication is a fantastic tool. Go learn that, or get started with that. If you can do that yourself, that's cool, but then can they do it? Is your team able to resolve it without you present? Because being able to teach that is the next level of success, right? Like, if you can make other people capable of resolving their own conflicts, you become less of a bottleneck, and you can then move up to the next level, and you can start focusing on actually helping them establish their decision-making paradigms, coaching them on different prioritization techniques and things that they can consider. And I think there it's like the question of how many times are people just resorting to democracy or endless conversations to try and get unanimity? If one of those two things are happening often, you're probably not doing it right, because you're wasting a ton of time, or you're getting very inefficient decision making happening. There should be a much more broader spectrum of decisions. Like, when is decision making just delegated? Like, we know that this is an expert decision made by this kind of expert. We have one of them in the team, just make it and move on. When is it a product owner consultation thing? When does the product owner need to consult with a stakeholder in order to be able to make the decision? And how quickly can we come to the conclusion about what needs to be happening in order to be able to make that decision? And how available are the people that need to be involved in that decision? And what happens when they're not available? And I think that, for me as a Scrum Master, is another measure of my success. It's like, if my team is able to quickly and effectively make decisions that are at least close to optimal for the kind of situation that they're facing, I'm doing a good job. If my team isn't, or they're defaulting to the same behavior every time, I probably need to go study up on, first off, what are decision-making techniques? What are all the different dimensions that you need to consider when you're making good decisions? And then how do you teach that to the group as well, in a way that they actually adopt it and use it? And then bonus points if your team is giving each other effective feedback, right? So how are they giving feedback? Are you giving them feedback? Are you helping them to unpack what they're great at and build on that? Or are people literally going into reviews and just picking holes in what's on the table and kind of shooting into it? Are we able to constructively point out what's working and help people see opportunities to be able to build on what isn't working in order to be able to make it to the next level? If that's only the product owner talking in order to be able to do that, or only you talking to be able to do that, then you're failing. You're succeeding if the team is collaboratively working to figure out how to give the feedback to each other to make it better. So for me, it's like, what kind of planning are you having? Are people disagreeing? Are they debating? Are they figuring it out together? What kind of day-to-day scrums are you having? Are people actually making decisions? Are your stand-ups actively having little huddles afterwards where people make decisions and they move forward? Are people stuck? Are they just reporting? And then the final one is in the reviews. Are the reviews actually places where people get together to work out how to make things better? Or are they just here's our work for the week. Product owner says yay or nay, we move on.
Absolutely. That's a great way to shape it, and also helps us as Scrum Masters to have those key questions as self-reflection questions. Maybe on Friday, sit down and think through those questions to constantly hone your practice. So thank you very much for sharing that with us, Jaques.
Cool.
Part of a successful Scrum Master job is to help the product owner. Tomorrow we explore that critical role in Scrum, the product owner role. Tune in to learn about product owner anti-patterns, what you can do to help the product owner, and a real-life example of what a great product owner is and what made it so. Tomorrow on our Friday Product Owner episode. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.